My name is Claire Dawson. I'm 47 years old. At 3:26 on a cold Friday afternoon in February, I stood beside my mother's casket in the Fellowship Hall of Grace Methodist Church in Asheville, North Carolina, holding a tray of coffee cups while my brother told our cousins I was basically the maid. His exact words were, "Claire always liked hovering around Mom's house with a rag in her hand. At least now she can put unpaid maid on her resume." People laughed. Not everyone, but enough. My sister, Marla, covered her mouth with two fingers and said, "Don't be awful, Grant," in the soft, amused voice of someone who wanted credit for disapproving without actually disagreeing. My brother Grant lifted his plastic cup of sweet tea and said, "What? She was there every day? Somebody had to dust the place." I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just set the coffee tray on the linen-covered table and adjusted the small silver brooch pinned to my black dress. It had belonged to my mother, a tiny bird with one wing lifted. What Grant didn't know was that at 4 o'clock, my mother's estate attorney was scheduled to arrive. What Marla didn't know was that Mom had not been confused, manipulated, or lonely when she signed her final instructions. What neither of them knew was that for the last 3 years of her life, my mother had kept a notebook in the top drawer of her nightstand. Every visit, every missed call, every bill paid, every promise broken, and every word of it had been copied, witnessed, and sealed with her estate documents. Before I tell you what happened in that fellowship hall, tell me where in the world you're watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder where stories like this find people, especially women who became the dependable one, the available one, the one who carried the family while everyone else performed grief from a distance. If that kind of quiet power speaks to you, please like this video and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Because this is not a story about fighting over an inheritance. This is that story. My mother, Eleanor Dawson, lived in the same blue house on Hawthorne Ridge Road for 42 years. It had white trim, a covered porch, a gravel driveway, and a row of hydrangeas she planted the year my father left. In summer, the flowers turned the color of old letters. In winter, the bare stems scratched against the porch railing when the wind came down from the mountains. Mom used to say the house knew how to survive weather. She did too. She was 76 when the first real symptoms started. Not the little things older people joke about, like forgetting a name or misplacing reading glasses. This was different. She left the kettle boiling until the handle melted. She drove to the pharmacy and could not remember how to get home. She called me at 6:17 one evening and asked whether my father was coming for supper, though he had been dead for 9 years by then. I was 43 at the time, divorced, no children, and working as an office manager for a small architectural firm downtown. My life was not empty, though my siblings often spoke as if it were. I had friends, work, a garden, a book club, a quiet apartment above a bakery, and Sunday mornings that belonged entirely to me. That changed gradually. Caregiving rarely arrives with a suitcase and announces itself. It slips in through small tasks until one day you realize your own life has become a hallway connecting someone else's needs. At first, I stopped by after work 3 times a week, then every day, then mornings before work and evenings after. I organized pillboxes, labeled cabinets, froze soups in single portions, installed grab bars, replaced smoke detector batteries, scheduled neurology appointments, argued with insurance, cleaned the refrigerator, sorted mail, and learned the difference between a tired question and a frightened one. My siblings were very supportive, in the way people can be supportive from 2 states away and 1 convenient emotional distance. Grant Dawson, my older brother, was 52 and lived in Charlotte. He owned a regional construction supply company and liked to say he had too many people depending on him whenever Mom needed something inconvenient. His wife, Blair, sent holiday wreaths, sympathy emojis, and once a lavender eye pillow for caregiver stress, which she had delivered to Mom's house with a gift receipt. Marla Dawson Pierce, my younger sister, was 44 and lived in Atlanta. She taught private yoga, posted videos about nervous system healing, and said things like, "I'm holding Mom in light," when I asked if she could come stay for a weekend so I could attend my friend's wedding. They were busy. Grant was always closing a deal. Marla was always leading a retreat. I was always there. At first, I told myself that was natural. I lived closest. I knew Mom's doctors. I understood her routines. I had always been the practical one. Practical. That word has followed women like me for generations. It sounds like praise until you notice how often people use it to assign work they do not want. The first time I realized my siblings had no intention of truly helping was on October 9th, 3 years before Mom died. She had fallen in the bathroom at 2:12 in the morning. She was not badly injured, but she was terrified. I spent the night in the emergency room holding her hand, while she repeatedly asked whether she had missed church. At 7:30, while Mom slept under a thin hospital blanket, I sent a group text. Mom fell last night. She's okay but scared. We need a care schedule. I can't do this alone. Grant replied at 8:04. I'm slammed this quarter. Can help financially if needed. Marla replied at 9:27. Oh no, poor mama. I'm teaching all weekend but sending love. I stared at my phone under the hospital lights. Financially if needed. Sending love. I typed back. I need time. Actual time. Grant did not respond. Marla sent 3 heart emojis. That afternoon, I drove Mom home, washed the blood from a small scrape on her elbow, changed her sheets, and made oatmeal with brown sugar, because she said it tasted like my grandmother's kitchen. The second moment came the following spring. Mom had been diagnosed with vascular dementia by then, though she still had clear days. Her neurologist recommended someone stay with her at night. I called Grant and Marla separately. Grant said, Claire, assisted living exists for a reason. I said, she doesn't qualify for the memory unit yet, and she doesn't want to leave the house. Mom doesn't always know what's best. Then come say that to her. He sighed. Don't make this emotional. That sentence, don't make this emotional. As if dementia, fear, exhaustion, and a mother asking why her children no longer visited were all accounting problems waiting for a calmer woman to solve. Marla said, I can come in July. It was April. I hired a night aide for 3 nights a week using Mom's modest savings and part of my own paycheck. The other 4 nights, I slept in the guest room under a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and old dust. I kept my phone beside my pillow and woke at every floorboard creak. On clear mornings, Mom knew what was happening. One morning in May, at 6:41, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee. She had made mine with cream and no sugar, exactly right. She looked at me and said, You're tired, baby. I sat across from her. So are you. She touched the mug with both hands. Grant called yesterday. I looked up. He did? Asked about the roof. Asked if I still had the name of the roofer your father used. Then he asked whether I had updated my will. My jaw tightened. What did you say? She smiled faintly. I said I remembered more than he hoped. That was Mom. Even as memory became unreliable, truth still found a chair in the room. The third moment came at Christmas. Mom loved Christmas. She had always hung a cedar wreath on the front door, baked molasses cookies, and placed little brass angels on the mantel. That year, she could not remember where the ornaments were kept, but she remembered the feeling of the house being full. I asked Grant and Marla to come. Grant arrived at noon on Christmas Eve, stayed 3 hours, took 2 business calls from the porch, and left, because Blair's family expected them for dinner in Charlotte. Marla arrived on Christmas morning, wearing a cream cashmere wrap and carrying a jar of homemade bath salts. She hugged Mom, took 6 photos, posted one with the caption Sacred Time with My Beautiful Mother, then left before supper because she had a sunrise gathering the next day. Mom sat at the dining room table after they left, looking at the 2 empty chairs. Did I do something? She asked. I was clearing plates. No, Mama. Then why are they always going? I gripped the edge of the serving bowl. Because they can, I thought. Because they know I will stay. Instead, I said, they have long drives. Mom nodded, trying to accept the explanation because mothers spend their whole lives protecting children from the truth, even when those children are grown enough to deserve it. That night, after she went to bed, I washed dishes alone at 11:34. Snow flurries moved past the kitchen window. My back hurt. My hands were cracked from sanitizer and cold weather. My phone buzzed with a message from Grant. Hope Mom had a good day. You're a saint. I read it twice. You're a saint. No one calls you a saint because they plan to help you. They call you a saint So your suffering sounds voluntary. I dried my hands, opened the kitchen drawer, took out one of Mom's yellow notebooks, and wrote down the sentence. Grant texted, "You're a saint, Christmas night." Did not stay for dinner. I did not know then that Mom had already started her own notebook. I found out 6 months later. It was June 15th, a hot afternoon with thunder gathering over the mountains. Mom had a clear day. Those became precious by then, bright windows in a house slowly darkening. She asked me to sit with her on the porch. I brought lemonade. She wore a blue cardigan despite the heat and held her small spiral notebook in her lap. "Claire," she said, "I need you not to argue." "That depends." She smiled. "You always were honest." I sat beside her. She handed me the notebook. Inside, in her careful handwriting, were dates and notes. Claire arrived 6:30 a.m. filled medication box. Made appointment with Dr. Levin. Grant called. Asked about sale value of house. Did not ask how I felt. Marla promised weekend visit. Cancelled. Said retreat was full of women needing her. Claire paid Duke Energy bill when autopay failed. I reimbursed her, but she did not ask. Claire slept on couch because I was afraid of shadows. Grant said assisted living may be best. Has not toured any homes. Marla sent candle. Scent gave me headache. Claire opened windows. I looked up slowly. "Mama?" She looked toward the hydrangeas. "I may forget things. I am not gone." My throat tightened. "Why are you writing all this?" "Because people like your brother and sister turn absence into opinion when money is involved." I said nothing. She turned to me. "I talked to Henry." Henry Wallace was Mom's attorney, a soft-spoken man with silver hair and half-moon glasses, who had handled her property documents after my father died. "When?" I asked. "Last month. You drove me." "I drove you to the bank." "I told you it was the bank." I stared at her. She gave a small shrug. "I'm still your mother." I almost laughed. Almost. "What did you do?" "What I should have done earlier." "Mama." She took the notebook back and placed one hand over it. "Your father and I bought this house together. After he left, I kept it. After he died, I paid it off. Grant thinks being the oldest son means the house should pass through him like a title. Marla thinks feelings are currency. You gave me time. Time is the only thing no estate can replace." I shook my head. "I didn't do it for the house." "I know. That is why you can be trusted with it." I looked away. The mountains were blue in the distance, soft and impossible. "You need money for care," I said. "The house may need to be sold eventually. If it does, Henry knows. But if it remains, it goes to you." "No." "Claire." "No, Mama. Grant and Marla will say I manipulated you." She smiled sadly. "They will say that no matter what I do. Let them say it to the documents." That was the first time I heard the plan. Not all of it. Just enough to make me afraid. I called Henry Wallace the next day. He said, "Your mother is very clear on her wishes. She has dementia. She has a diagnosis. She also has capacity at times. And I have medical confirmation regarding the day she executed the documents. I would not have allowed anything improper. They'll contest it. They may try. I don't want a war." "Ms. Dawson," he said gently, "war is not prevented by surrendering before the first shot." I hated that he was right. The final year of Mom's life was both brutal and tender. She forgot Grant's name sometimes, but remembered the hymn she sang at her wedding. She called me Mama twice and apologized both times as if she had committed a social error at church. She hid spoons in her dresser. She accused the mailman of stealing her peaches. She told me one evening that my father was waiting on the porch, and when I said he was gone, she said, "I know, but I still check." Caregiving stripped life to essentials: medication, bathing, soft foods, clean sheets, warm socks, music, safety, patience, repetition, more patience. I cut my hours at work. Then I left completely when hospice began. My savings thinned. My social life narrowed to the grocery store cashier who knew I bought ginger ale for Mom's nausea, and the pharmacist who stayed late once because her pain medication needed authorization. Grant visited twice that year, once in August when he spent the first 20 minutes on the phone in the driveway and the next 30 measuring the porch with his eyes. He said, "This place needs a lot of work." I said, "So does Mom." He frowned. "That's not fair." No. He looked uncomfortable, then asked where she kept the insurance paperwork. The second visit was in December. He brought a poinsettia and stayed 47 minutes. Mom was having a difficult day and did not recognize him at first. When she finally did, she touched his face and said, "You got tall." He laughed awkwardly. On the way out, he said to me, "I can't see her like this." I wanted to say, "I see her like this every day." Instead, I said, "She is still your mother when she is hard to look at." He left without answering. Marla visited 3 times. She cried each time before entering the room, which meant I had to comfort her before she saw Mom. She brought essential oils hospice asked me not to use. She took one photo of herself holding Mom's hand, then deleted it because Mom's mouth was open, and she said it looked too sad. The last time Marla came, in January, Mom was mostly sleeping. Marla stood beside the bed for 6 minutes and whispered, "I release you, Mama." Then she went downstairs and asked if there was coffee. I made it. Because even then, I was still serving. Mom died on February 7th at 4:52 in the morning. It was raining. Not hard, just a thin winter rain ticking against the window. I was sitting beside her bed holding her hand. Her breathing had been changing for hours. The hospice nurse had warned me. I had called Grant at 2:10 and Marla at 2:15. Grant did not answer. Marla texted at 3:04. "Is this really happening tonight?" I took sleep support. Mom opened her eyes once at 4:39. "Claire," she whispered, "I'm here." "Bird." I leaned closer. "What, Mama?" She moved one finger toward my chest. I was wearing her silver bird brooch. She had asked me to pin it to my sweater the night before. "Keep flying," she said. Then she closed her eyes. 13 minutes later, she was gone. I called Grant again at 5:10. He answered groggy. "Mom passed," I said. Silence. Then, "When?" 4:52. He exhaled. "I'll call you back." Marla called at 6:38, crying so hard I had to tell her 3 times that Mom had died peacefully. By 8, both siblings had begun discussing funeral arrangements as if they had been present for the dying. Grant wanted the service Friday because weekend traffic from Charlotte would be difficult. Marla wanted a celebration of life with less church energy. Mom had left instructions. Grace Methodist, hymn number 378, White Lilies, Not Roses. Burial beside my father, even though they had divorced, because she said, "He wandered, but he came home in the ground." Pound cake from Mrs. Lacey. No open microphone. I followed her instructions exactly. Grant arrived the night before the funeral. He stayed at a hotel. Marla arrived the morning of the funeral, wearing a black wrap dress and a wide-brimmed hat, inappropriate for the weather but excellent for photographs. The service began at 1 o'clock. The church was full enough to remind me that Mom had existed beyond our family. Neighbors, former co-workers from the library, women from her old quilting circle, the mailman, Mr. Reyes, who cried quietly during the hymn, the hospice nurse, Angela, who sat in the back row. Grant gave a polished reading from Ecclesiastes. Marla read a poem she found online and changed one line to include sacred feminine lineage. People nodded, because funerals make everyone generous. I did not speak. I had spoken to Mom for years. I did not need a microphone to prove it. After the burial, we returned to the fellowship hall. Long tables, white cloths, coffee urns, casseroles, pound cake, a framed photograph of Mom on a table near the entrance, taken when she was 68 and still strong enough to kneel in her garden. That was where Grant called me the Maid. At 3:26. I remember because I looked at the wall clock above the church kitchen. "Claire always liked hovering around Mom's house with a rag in her hand," he said. "At least now she can put unpaid maid on her resume." The laughter hit me softly, not like a slap, like dust. Years of work reduced to a joke by a man who did not know where Mom kept her night medication. I set down the coffee tray. Marla said, "Don't be awful, Grant." Smiling. Grant shrugged. "I'm just saying, she took over the house like staff. Maybe she'll finally get a break now." My cousin Linda looked at me, embarrassed. I smiled politely, not warmly, politely. There are moments when dignity feels almost like leaving your body. You stand, you breathe, You do not give them the collapse they ordered with their cruelty. At 3:48, Henry Wallace entered the fellowship hall. He wore a dark suit and carried a brown leather briefcase. His hair was neatly combed. He paused near the door, removed his overcoat, and looked around until he found me. Grant noticed him first. "Henry," he said loudly, crossing the room, "good to see you, though I assume business can wait until next week." Henry shook his hand. "My condolences, Grant." Marla came over quickly. "Henry, we were just saying we should all get together after things settle." Henry nodded. "That is actually why I'm here. Your mother requested that certain final instructions be read immediately following her funeral reception, with family and witnesses present." Grant's smile stiffened. "Witnesses?" "Yes." Marla looked at me. I said nothing. At 4 o'clock exactly, Henry asked immediate family to gather in the small church library off the fellowship hall. But Grant, perhaps thinking witnesses would favor him, said, "No need for secrecy. We're all family here." Henry looked at me. I folded my hands. "Mom asked for witnesses." I said, "This room has them." So we remained in the fellowship hall. About 20 people stayed. Cousins, neighbors, 2 church elders, Angela from hospice, Mrs. Lacey, who had baked the pound cake, Mr. Reyes, the mailman. People who had seen enough to understand more than Grant realized. Henry placed his briefcase on the table where the coffee tray had been. Grant stood with arms crossed. Marla sat dramatically, one hand over her heart. Henry opened a folder. Before I read the relevant portions of Mrs. Eleanor Dawson's estate instructions, I need to clarify that she executed these documents on June 17th, in the presence of myself, my paralegal, and Dr. Elaine Porter, who provided a written statement that Mrs. Dawson had testamentary capacity at the time. Grant frowned. "Capacity? Why are we starting there?" Henry looked at him. "Because your mother anticipated that you might question it." The room quieted. Grant's face reddened slightly. Henry continued. "Mrs. Dawson's estate consists primarily of her residence at 14 Hawthorne Ridge Road, remaining savings, personal effects, and household contents. Her liquid accounts, after final expenses, are to be divided into 3 equal shares among her children: Grant Dawson, Claire Dawson, and Marla Pierce." Marla exhaled as if reassured. Grant nodded once. Then Henry turned the page. "The residence at 14 Hawthorne Ridge Road, including the land, outbuildings, furnishings, and all household contents not otherwise specifically assigned, is left solely to my daughter, Claire Ann Dawson." The room went still. Grant laughed once. "No." Henry did not look up. "That is the instruction." Grant stepped forward. "That house is the estate." "Yes," Henry said, "a significant part of it." Marla's eyes filled instantly. "Mama would never cut us out like that." Henry looked at her calmly. "She did not cut you out. You each receive equal liquid shares. The house is specifically devised to Claire." Grant pointed at me. "Because she was in that house every day whispering in Mom's ear." I felt the room turn toward me. There it was. The accusation Mom predicted. Henry removed another document. Mrs. Dawson also anticipated that claim. Grant snapped, "Of course she did. Because Claire planted it." Henry's voice sharpened for the first time. "Mr. Dawson, I would advise you to be careful." Grant's mouth closed. Henry lifted a small black notebook from the folder. "This is a copy of Mrs. Dawson's care record. The original is held in my office. It was maintained by Mrs. Dawson from June 15th until her handwriting became inconsistent in late November, after which hospice and caregiver logs corroborate the pattern." My heart moved painfully. The notebook. "Mom's final witness." Henry read. "June 15th. I told Claire about the house," she argued. "That is why I know I chose correctly." A murmur moved through the room. Marla looked at me. Henry continued. "July 3rd, Grant called. Asked whether I had considered selling, while market values were strong. Did not ask whether I ate lunch." Grant's face tightened. "July 10th. Marla canceled visit. Said women at her retreat needed her. Claire changed my sheets after I had an accident. She sang hymns so I would not be embarrassed." I looked down. The room blurred slightly, but I did not cry. Not there. Henry read another entry. August 2nd. Claire paid night aid from her own account because insurance delayed reimbursement. She did not tell me. I found receipt. Grant shifted. Henry continued. September 14th. Grant visited, asked about insurance paperwork, looked in file cabinet. Claire made pot roast because he used to like it. He did not stay to eat. Someone near the back whispered, "Lord." Henry turned a page. October 21st. Marla cried in hallway before seeing me. Claire comforted her, then comforted me. I wonder who comforts Claire. The sentence entered the room and stayed there. I could not look up. Henry paused, then continued. November 6th. I forgot Claire's name today. She did not correct me. She held my hand until I remembered I was safe. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Grant said, quieter now, "Enough." Henry looked at him. "Your mother requested these excerpts be read if either of you accused Claire of manipulation, greed, or undue influence." Marla whispered, "This is cruel." I looked at her then. "No," I said softly, "it was Daly." She flinched. Henry returned to the will. In addition to the residence, Mrs. Dawson leaves the following personal items. To Grant Dawson, their father's watch, if Grant wants it, with the note. He liked to leave, but time kept going. A few people inhaled. Grant stared at the floor. To Marla Pierce, the Cedar Hope chest and quilt collection, with the note, "May she learn that comfort is something made, not performed." Marla began to cry. Real tears, or offended tears, I could not tell. To Claire Dawson, the silver bird brooch, all journals, recipes, and the blue house, with the note, "She did not hover, she stayed." Silence. Complete. Then Henry removed one final page. There is also a personal letter to be read aloud. Grant said, "No." Henry ignored him. "My children, if you are hearing this after my funeral, it means I have gone where memory cannot frighten me anymore. Grant, you were my first child, and I loved your confidence before it hardened into entitlement. Marla, you were my youngest, and I loved your sensitivity before it became a way to avoid responsibility. Claire, you are my middle child, and perhaps because you stood between things you learned to hold more than your share. I know what each of you gave me. I also know what each of you did not give. This house goes to Claire, not because she wanted it. She did not. It goes to Claire because she kept it alive while I was dying inside it. She knew which floorboard creaked, which soup I could swallow, which photograph frightened me on bad days, which hymn calmed me, and when to open the curtains so morning could find me. Do not call her the maid, she was the witness. Do not call her greedy. She gave what money cannot repay. Do not call her manipulative. I made this decision while I still knew exactly who had stayed and who had visited. If you are angry, be honest enough to ask whether you are angry at Claire or at the record of your own absence. Mother. No one moved. Not Grant, not Marla, not me. The fellowship hall had become something other than a reception room. The coffee urns still sat on the side table. The pound cake remained half-sliced. People still held paper napkins. But the air had changed. Truth had entered in my mother's handwriting. Grant was the first to speak. That's private. Henry closed the folder. Your mother made it conditional. The condition was met when you mocked Claire's caregiving publicly. Grant turned toward me. You told him? I looked at him. No. Then how would he know? Henry said, Mr. Dawson, your mother knew you. That sentence did what nothing else had. Grant's face lost color. Marla stood. I can't believe this is happening at Mom's funeral. I said, neither can I. She looked at me, wounded. I continued, quietly. I couldn't believe you both left her care to me and then made jokes beside her casket either. A few people looked away, not because I was wrong, because truth makes bystanders examine their shoes. Grant's voice hardened again. So that's it? You get the house because you played nurse? I felt something in me go very still. Played nurse. I saw Mom's thin wrists, the bruises from blood draws, the nights she cried because she knew she had wet the bed. The mornings she apologized for needing help. The smell of antiseptic. The sound of the oxygen machine. The soft weight of her hand in mine as she died. I looked at Grant. I cleaned our mother's body when she was too weak to stand. I fed her when she forgot how to hold a spoon. I slept in a chair because she was afraid of the dark. I learned which medication made her nauseous, and which hymn brought her back when she thought she was lost. If that is playing nurse, then yes, I played it until the end. The room was silent. Short sentences are not always enough. Sometimes the truth deserves full weight. Grant looked away first. Marla whispered, "I didn't know it was that bad." I turned to her. "I told you." She shook her head. "You always sounded like you had it handled." There it was. The quietest indictment of capable women. We sound like we have it handled, because if we sound like we are drowning, people complain about the noise instead of throwing rope. "I had it handled," I said. "That does not mean it was not heavy." Henry placed the documents back in his briefcase. "The estate will proceed according to Mrs. Dawson's instructions. Any contest should be directed through counsel." Grant grabbed his coat from the back of a chair. "This isn't over." Henry nodded. "That is your right." Grant looked at me. "Enjoy the house." I said, "I already loved it." That stopped him for half a second. Then he left. Marla followed 10 minutes later after hugging 3 people dramatically and avoiding me. When the fellowship hall emptied, I stayed behind to help Mrs. Lacey wrap the pound cake. She touched my arm. "Your mama knew what she was doing." I nodded. "I know." But knowing did not make the day hurt less. That is something people misunderstand about being vindicated. Truth can defend you and still leave bruises. The weeks after the funeral were ugly in the ordinary legal ways. Grant hired an attorney in Charlotte, who sent a letter suggesting undue influence, questionable capacity, and, quote, unusual dependency dynamics. Henry responded with medical statements, witness affidavits, the care notebook, hospice records, and Mom's recorded video confirmation from June 17th. I did not know about the video. Henry showed it to me before sending the transcript. Mom sat in his office wearing her blue cardigan, hair pinned back, hands folded in her lap. Henry asked, "Mrs. Dawson, why are you leaving the house to Claire?" Mom looked directly into the camera. "Because she stayed. And because the others will say she tricked me." "Did she?" "No. She told me not to." "Are you making this decision freely?" "Yes." "Do you understand Grant and Marla may be upset?" Mom smiled. "They are often upset when consequences have addresses." I laughed through tears when I saw that. My mother, even then, Grant's challenge did not survive the documentation. Marla never formally joined it, though she sent me long emails about spiritual betrayal and ancestral wounds. I read the first one. Then I created a folder titled Marla, and stopped opening them until Sunday evenings, when I could read with tea and emotional distance. Grant eventually withdrew his objection in May, after his attorney likely explained that losing publicly would cost more than being angry privately. He did not apologize. Marla did, sort of. Her text came on June 2nd at 8:14 in the morning. "I'm sorry you felt unsupported. I was dealing with my own grief too." I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, then sent nothing. Some apologies are just old furniture painted white. They look different. They are not. I moved into Mom's house in July. Not immediately. I needed time. The house had been a sick room for too long. I hired a cleaning company. I repainted the downstairs bathroom. I replaced the hospital bed space with a reading chair and a small table. I kept Mom's bedroom as a bedroom, not a shrine. On the first night I slept there, rain fell softly on the porch roof. I woke at 2:10, heart racing, convinced Mom had called my name. The house was quiet. I walked to her room anyway. The bed was empty. The curtains were still. The silver bird brooch sat on the dresser where I had placed it before sleeping. I stood in the doorway and realized that for the first time in years, no one needed me at that hour. The absence felt like freedom and grief holding hands. I went downstairs, made tea, and sat on the porch until sunrise. The hydrangeas were blooming. Blue, pale purple, and one stubborn pink bloom near the steps. In August, I returned to work part-time with a different firm. Smaller, kinder. I no longer wanted to manage everyone's chaos. I started consulting on office systems for small businesses, which made me smile, because after years of managing medication charts and insurance calls, no filing system frightened me. I also began volunteering twice a month with a caregiver support group at the hospital. The first night I attended, a woman named Janice cried because her brother said she was lucky to have time with her father while they lived far away. I reached across the table and said, "Time can be a gift and a burden. You are allowed to name both." She cried harder. So did I, later in the car. Grant visited the house once after the estate settled. It was October 11th at 4:32 in the afternoon. He called from the driveway instead of knocking. "I'm outside," he said. "I see you. Can I come in?" I considered saying no. Then I said, "For 10 minutes." He entered like someone stepping into a museum that used to be his childhood. The house had changed slightly. I had moved the sofa, hung different curtains, placed Mom's photograph on the mantel instead of the side table. He looked around, trying not to show that it bothered him. "You painted the kitchen?" "Yes." Mom liked yellow. Mom also liked clean walls. He almost smiled. Almost. We stood in the living room. He placed a small box on the coffee table. "Dad's watch," he said. "I don't want it." "Henry said Mom left it to you." "I know." "Then why bring it here?" He looked at the floor. "Because I don't think I earned it." That was the closest thing to honesty I had heard from him in months. I did not rush to comfort him. He continued. "I said something awful at the funeral." "Yes." I was embarrassed. "About what?" He looked at me then. "That you did what I should have helped do." There it was. Not a full apology yet, but a door. "Yes," I said. He swallowed. "I'm sorry, Claire." Specific, small, late. I accepted it with a nod. "Thank you." He looked toward the hallway. Was it really that hard? I thought about protecting him from the answer. Old habits. Then I let them pass. "Yes." He nodded. "I don't know if I could have done it." "I know." He flinched, but he did not argue. That was progress. Before he left, he touched the back of Mom's reading chair. She wrote everything down. "Enough." He exhaled. Of course she did. Marla came at Christmas. She brought a wreath, 2 candles, and a careful expression. She stood in the foyer and cried, because the house smelled like cinnamon and furniture polish. I had made coffee, not because I owed her, because I wanted some. We sat in the kitchen at 10:15 on a bright, cold morning. She apologized better than her text. "I made your caregiving invisible because if I saw it clearly, I would have had to change my life," she said. I looked at her. That was a real sentence. Ugly, honest, useful. I know. "I told myself you wanted to be needed." "No," I said. "I wanted help." She nodded, crying. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." "Can we be sisters again?" I thought about it. "We can start by being truthful." She wiped her face. "I can try." Trying is not the same as doing. I know. I was not sure she did, but for the first time, she seemed willing to learn. Relationships after betrayal are not rebuilt with one apology. They are rebuilt, if at all, through repeated behavior when nobody is watching. Grant calls now once a month. Sometimes we talk for 5 minutes. Sometimes 20. He has never again called me the maid. Marla visits twice a year and stays in a hotel. That is healthier for both of us. The house is mine now. Legally. Emotionally, it still belongs partly to Mom. Houses do that. They keep voices in corners. Her laugh in the kitchen. Her humming near the linen closet. Her last breath in the upstairs room. But slowly, my own life has entered too. I planted rosemary by the porch steps. I turned the dining room into a workspace. I replaced the broken porch swing Grant never fixed. I kept the hydrangeas. Every February 7th, I light a candle at 4:52 in the morning. Not because I enjoy grief. Because love deserves witnesses after the paperwork is done. Mom's notebook stays in my desk drawer. I do not read it often. I do not need to. Knowing it exists is enough. Sometimes people ask if I think Mom was cruel for having Henry read those words at her funeral reception. No. I think she was tired of women's labor being converted into family folklore. She knew exactly what would happen. Grant would joke. Marla would soften the joke without stopping it. I would stand there swallowing humiliation, because I did not want to disturb people who had already been comfortable through my exhaustion. So Mom disturbed them herself. One final act of mothering. One final correction. My mother did not leave me the house as payment. No house can pay for watching the person who raised you forget where the bathroom is. No deed can compensate for the loneliness of being the only sibling who knows the hospice nurse's number by heart. No inheritance can reimburse the years when your own life becomes a margin note in someone else's decline. She left me the house as recognition. That is different. Recognition does not erase pain, but it refuses to let pain be renamed duty by people who did not share it. If you are listening to this while caring for someone, or after caring for someone, or after being mocked by relatives who visited twice and had opinions forever, I want you to hear me. You are not just helping. You are not the one with time. You are not good at this in a way that makes everyone else free to disappear. Care is work. Care is love. Care is memory, labor, patience, and witness. And if the people who left you alone with it later call you greedy, dramatic, or controlling, let the record speak. Keep the texts. Keep the receipts. Keep the appointment notes. Keep the truth. Not because every family will face a lawyer in a fellowship hall, but because you may need proof someday that you were not imagining how heavy it was. Thank you for spending this time with me and with Claire Dawson's story here on Ultimate Revenge. Stories like this are for every woman who became the dependable daughter, the unpaid caregiver, the quiet witness, and then had to listen while absent relatives rewrote the past. If this story found you at the right moment, I hope you remember that being gentle does not mean being erasable. Follow Ultimate Revenge for more stories about women who were underestimated, betrayed, and quietly took their power back. So tell me, if your siblings mocked you as the maid after you cared for your dying mother, would you stay silent, or would you let the lawyer read the truth in front of everyone?